something quietly shifted in Washington on a Friday afternoon, and almost nobody noticed. A single name appeared on a screen, tucked inside a bracket next to another, the kind of detail most people would scroll past. But for one specific group, scattered across a country, that line of text landed like a phone call at 3 in the morning. Something was building, and not even the woman at the center of it fully grasped yet how far it was about to travel. This is the story of a 20-year-old from the Philippines walking into an American tennis stadium and, almost without meaning to, sparking a movement. Welcome back to Tennis Court Cult, the place where we linger on the moments everyone else scrolls past. Let's start with the draw itself, because that's where the tension begins. Alex is set to open against Zheng Qinwen. If that name doesn't ring a bell, give it a second because it should. Zheng is an Olympic gold medalist from Paris 2024, has climbed as high as world number 4, and hits with a controlled violence that has ended matches in straight sets more times than not. Here's the twist that should unsettle anyone rooting for the underdog. Zheng is entering on a wild card, meaning she has nothing to protect and nothing to lose. Just a former top 4 player with a point to prove, facing a rising star in the very first match of her season. It's tennis's version of being tossed into deep water and told to swim before you've caught your breath. A savage draw, a dangerous opponent. That's what it looks like on paper. But paper doesn't capture what was already brewing outside that bracket, in a city with no idea what it was about to experience. Somewhere in an apartment in California, a house in New Jersey, a family group chat that exists in practically every Filipino household across America, phones started lighting up, not with sports alerts, but something closer to a rallying cry. Flights were being priced out before the draw had even fully loaded. Flags were dug out of closets. Watch parties, actual coordinated gatherings with printed schedules, were organized within hours. This is where the story stops being about tennis and becomes something much larger. If that sounds like an exaggeration, consider what a tennis legend had to say. Andy Roddick, a former world number 1 who's watched every kind of crowd this sport has produced, saw what was unfolding in Washington and couldn't stay quiet. He compared it to a 4th-round Wimbledon match selling out so completely there was no space left anywhere, and he named the whole phenomenon Ealamania, adding flatly that he was here for it, because it was good for the sport. This isn't a fan coining a nickname. It's one of the most respected voices in American tennis history, publicly naming a phenomenon after a 20-year-old who hadn't even played her first match of the tournament yet. And here's where the story climbs another level, because Washington, D.C. isn't Melbourne or Dubai, regions with naturally massive Filipino populations that tournaments have learned to expect. Melbourne once drew 60,000 Filipino fans across a single Australian Open, which tracks, since Australia holds one of the largest Filipino communities outside the Philippines itself. Dubai made sense too, given its huge population of overseas Filipino workers who treat these tournaments like family reunions, and even Birmingham made a kind of sense, a smaller venue where a loud crowd feels even louder. Washington, D.C. is different. It sits roughly 4,000 miles from Manila in the middle of America's East Coast, a city built around policy, not tennis fandom. And yet the chant started anyway, 2 syllables over and over, off walls that had genuinely never heard anything like it. That's not a regional quirk anymore. That's a signal that something has crossed oceans and time zones, and every boundary that usually keeps these things confined to one part of the map. And it isn't slowing down. So why does one tennis player pull this level of devotion out of an entire diaspora scattered across a continent? The answer is quieter than you'd expect, and that makes it land even harder. Alex has spoken about this herself, and it wasn't the polished, forgettable filler athletes give to burn airtime. She talked about pride, about where her people come from, about a community that doesn't just celebrate success but shares it, as if the joy belongs to everyone the instant it happens to one person. That's why families are rearranging their sleep schedules, staying up until absurd hours, just to watch a match thousands of miles from where they're sitting. Now let's slow down and look at the tennis itself, because that's where the real tension lives. It's easy to get so caught up in the crowd noise that you forget there's an athlete who still has to win points, one at a time, with all that weight on her shoulders. Alex arrives in Washington ranked number 29 in the world, 1 spot shy of her career high, reached right after an unforgettable Wimbledon run. Here's the detail that reframes everything. She's defending almost nothing, just 70 points total from last year's hardcourt season, meaning nearly everything she earns this week is pure gain. That should feel like relief. It doesn't, because standing across the net in the first match is a player who's already beaten her once before. Their only previous meeting came in 2023 at the Asian Games semi-finals, and Zheng won it in 3 sets. That memory hasn't disappeared just because time has passed. It sits there quietly, an old wound that never fully closed, adding one more layer of motivation to everything else Alex is carrying into this match. And if, somehow, Alex gets past a player with an Olympic gold medal and a point to prove, the reward isn't a breather. It's Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion of this exact tournament, who steamrolled through last year's field, including a straight sets win over Anna Kalinskaya in the final, and who'll walk back onto this court already knowing she can win here. 2 matches, 2 completely different threats, one explosive and relentless, the other composed and battle-tested on this exact surface. That's the gauntlet facing a 20-year-old who has barely played on hard courts all season, a detail that changes the entire psychological weight of this tournament. The last time Alex competed on a hard court was back in March, in Miami, before the clay season reshaped her year, before Wimbledon turned her into a household name overseas, before any of what we just described had happened. Her ranking has climbed, her presence on court carries a different gravity now, and her name alone can shift the energy inside a stadium before a ball is struck. But here's the truest thing in this story: none of that matters to the court. The court doesn't know about Ealamania. It doesn't care about diaspora pride, about flags in the stands, about a legend calling your rise a phenomenon. It asks one question over and over, and it doesn't accept excuses as an answer. Can you execute? That's the whole test, especially against someone who strikes the ball as heavy and fearlessly as Zheng Qinwen does. There is one more twist tucked underneath all of this, one almost nobody was talking about, and it shows how quickly things can shift even when the bigger picture looks perfect from the outside. Alex and Venus Williams were supposed to reunite as a doubles pair in Washington, after a run to the quarterfinals together at Bad Homburg that had captivated fans everywhere, a genuine crossing of tennis generations. People were excited. It felt like a storyline that writes itself. And then it simply didn't happen. Venus paired instead with Diana Schneider, and when asked about it, she was gracious but brief, saying the earlier partnership had been enjoyable, that this reunion hadn't come together this time, but that she'd welcome the chance again in the future. No drama, just one of those quiet redirections that happens constantly in professional sports and rarely gets explained in full. Which means Alex walks into Washington with singles as her only focus, one draw, nothing to split her attention. In a strange way, that simplicity makes the stakes feel even higher, because there's nowhere left to hide. So here's where we land, right at the edge of the biggest question this tournament is built around. One nobody, not the fans, not the commentators, not even Alex herself, can answer in advance. Can she do it again? Not on grass, where her flat, aggressive shots create chaos that low bounces only make worse for opponents, a surface that seems built for exactly the tennis she plays best. This time it's hard courts, blue concrete baking under a Washington summer, against a player capable of hitting with enough weight to force errors out of anyone not completely locked in from the first point. This is the real test, not whether she can win on a surface built for her strengths, but whether Wimbledon was the start of something permanent or a perfect storm that only exists on grass. And somewhere inside the William H.G. Fitzgerald Tennis Center, a venue built for 7,500 people that's about to feel every bit of that capacity and then some, thousands of fans who cross cities, states, and in some cases an entire ocean, just to be present for this exact moment, are about to find out the answer in real time, together, all at once. The chants will start before the first serve, they always do now, but chants don't win points, and crowds don't hit forehands. All of that noise, all of that love, all of that pride traveling across an entire diaspora gets left outside the lines the second the ball is in play. What happens next belongs entirely to her. This match against Zheng Qinwen isn't just a first round. It's the opening word of an answer an entire community has been waiting weeks to hear, and whatever that word turns out to be, everything else that follows in Washington depends on it. If this story pulled you in the way it pulled us and while putting it together, make sure you're subscribed to Tennis Court Cult, because this is exactly the kind of moment we live for, the ones that start small and quiet and end up meaning so much more than anyone expected. We'll be back with the next chapter of this story very soon, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.